Oh,
here we go. Welcome back to the Strategic Veteran, where we dive deep into the stories of resilience, transition, and growth that define the veteran journey. Whether you're transitioning out, charting a new course, or simply seeking inspiration, you're in the right place. Today, I'm honored to introduce to you a remarkable guest whose story captures the very essence of what this podcast is all about. Benjamin Parmley is a 22-year Marine Corps veteran who has seamlessly transitioned into not just one, but multiple post-military roles, showing us what's possible when dedication, leadership, and unshakable sense of purpose come together. As a gunnery sergeant in the United States Marine Corps, Benjamin deployed to Iraq in 2009 and went on to shape the next generation of warriors while serving as a drill instructor from 2013 to 2016 at Marine Corps Recruiting Depot, San Diego. However, Benjamin's journey began even earlier. At just 16 years old, he attended his first fire academy, igniting a spark for leadership and service that became his life's cornerstone. Drawn to Marine Corps at 18, he followed a calling that only grew stronger in the wake of 9/11 and influential mentorship from his early days as an E4. What makes Benjamin's experience so profound is it just isn't his military career. It's how he navigated the challenging transition out of uniform. Like so many veterans, Benjamin faced the daunting question of purpose after service, and through perseverance and reflection, he came to realize something powerful. Purpose doesn't just find you, you have to manufacture it. That philosophy has not only guided his journey into the civilian world, but also inspired him to help other veterans find meaningful, fulfilling paths forward. Today, Benjamin wears many hats: a safety manager in the construction industry, a financial professional, a retirement specialist, and even the director of leadership development. On top of that, he launched 2 businesses prior to his military retirement and now dedicates himself to a mission close to his heart, giving veterans a purpose. In this conversation, we'll unpack the pivotal moments that shaped Benjamin's career, the lessons learned during his transition out of the Marines, and his powerful insights on redefining purpose, especially when those moments of post-school blues set in. Plus, we'll dive into how his current projects are empowering veterans to not just navigate civilian life, but to thrive in it. So grab some coffee, find a comfortable seat, and get ready to hear from a leader, a builder, a mentor who's passionate about turning mission into momentum. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss this. Welcome, Benjamin. Thanks for coming on the show, man.
hey, with that, that's probably the best introduction I've ever got.
Hey, man, everything has a purpose. People bitch about having to fill out the form to come on the show, but it helps me give you the credit that you deserve. So thanks for being here, man. Thanks for filling out the form and giving us the information. And let's dive right into your life, dude. Where did you grow up and what inspired you to join the military?
So I grew up in Maryland. Grew up in the sticks, in the farming communities of Carroll County. I didn't have a lot of connection to military service, like around me. My dad was in. I had family members that were in. My dad was in the Army when I was very young. I don't remember it. I think he was kicked out before I turned 2. It didn't really. Him and the Army didn't mesh very well. My grandfather, he was actually in the Battle of Okinawa with the Army. So he served in World War II. I had uncles that were in the Air Force, and one great uncle that I met that was in the Marines back in like the 50s and 60s. I met him once, and right before I went to boot camp, he ended up passing. But it felt like, I kind of joke because people ask why'd you join. I said nothing better to do at the time. But it felt more like a calling. Like the recruiter sat down with me. It made sense. I couldn't think of a reason not to go. I can remember telling my grandmother when I was a little kid that I was going to join the military because my dad did. And at that time, I didn't know his military service. I didn't know his what he did or didn't do. But she didn't like me joining at all because he didn't have a good experience with it. But yeah, it just felt like something I was kind of drawn to do. And it was before 9/11 when I came in. So it was peacetime Marine Corps. There was no wars going on. And it just felt like something that I was supposed to do.
Yeah. Did you talk to any other branches, or was it just always Marine Corps?
It was the Marine Corps.
Just It's like it's funny because I've had a bunch of Marines on this show, and 90% of them I would say just got it from the uniform. It's always the uniform that draws them in, and then they're in the Marines. Was that a similar case for you? Is it the uniform?
No. The only thing I knew of the Marines was a Bugs Bunny cartoon in the 80s.
I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, he transforms into a Marine and he marches off, and that's the only thing. It's the only thing I really knew of the Marines until my buddy went to join, and I actually, because I was in line with being a firefighter, I was actually on the wait list for Baltimore County Fire or Baltimore City Fire Department, but that was going to be like a 4 or 5 year wait. And I was sitting in this little town working at Pizza Hut. You know, I was more qualified than most of the volunteer firefighters at the station I was working at. But I was a volunteer, and I was only 16, 17 years old. So I couldn't ride the trucks yet because I wasn't old enough. So I was waiting to get on at Baltimore City. After I graduated, I saw the process. Apply when I turned 18. It's going to be 4 or 5 years. And I'm gonna go Coast Guard, search and rescue. It's like that was really in line with what I wanted to do, and I think you kind of hear that a lot from a lot of people. But my buddy's like, "Hey, like the Marine Corps got programs like that too," and he handed me a card, and I was like, all right, "Whatever." Well, I never called the guy on the card, but he called me.
Of course.
And, we sat down. He showed me everything in the book. Of MOSs, and I saw the Marine Corps firefighters crash fire rescue, and I was like, man, that's really cool. That's what I want to do if I do join. And it was like, cool. And that dude called me every day for a week, and I'm like, I don't know yet. And finally, Friday, yeah, I was like, you want to join? I was like, I don't know. And then, like every day for a week, he called me, and then on Friday, he got pretty mad. It was like, well, you call me when you do know. When he slammed the phone down, and I'm like, all right. And then it was 2 weeks later. I was like, nope, I'm doing it. And it was kind of I wasn't trying to talk myself out of it, but it was just sitting there in my face, like, you need to go do this. You need to go do this. And I called him back. I was like, all right, let's do it. And he goes, man, after I went through MEPS and got all in and everything, he goes, I never thought I'd ever hear from you again.
You know, it's funny that you bring that up because you say, you know, you weren't necessarily trying to talk yourself out of it. I'm trying to think back to when I was 17 and I joined the Army. I did it with no hesitation. I had some serious kind of home life stuff going on. And so I never, ever walked it back. I never thought about it. I was never nervous about it. I never even wanted to change my mind. And it's really weird because I think about all the decisions ahead of me in my future and up to this point. And it's like, that's one decision I can honestly look back and say, I just was all in. Everything else I've always had to be back and forth on. Am I making the right decision? Right. Like, it's just really interesting to me that a lot of us don't think about that decision. We don't walk it back. We don't second guess it. It's just like something I think in our DNA is just like, we have to go do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's interesting. So did you end up becoming a firefighter in the Marine Corps? Because I know when I talked to the Marine Corps, they were like, no, you can't choose your job. We're going to tell you what you're going to do.
Yeah, I got really, really lucky. I'm one of the rare cases that got pretty much everything he asked for. So a few things may have helped because I was already had the certifications that the Fire Academy and the Marine Corps was giving. I put those in my application for like the contract or whatever that you send
right.
that the recruiters build. I put all my certifications in there. My dad tried to intervene. My dad was a cop in
Uh-oh.
My dad was actually on the Capitol Police. They're kind of in a bad light right now because of January 6th. But he luckily.
Quick question, real quick. So you said your dad had gotten kicked out of the military?
Okay, so yes. So my dad, I've got my real dad that I barely know, and then I have my stepdad,
who is dad, right?
Yeah, he was dad. So stepdad was the cop in DC.
Okay. Because I was just wondering, like, if your dad gets kicked out, how are you going to get a job as a cop? You know what I mean? Like, particularly at the Capitol. Like, that wasn't making sense to me.
Yeah, no, my biological father was kicked out of the Army when I was, he must have been 21, 22. I was maybe 1 or 2 years old.
For sure.
And that was kind of, he never really got off the ground after that.
Right.
It's kind of, but fast forward a few weird years, and then my mom meets my stepdad, and he was the rock. Like he was kind of, I don't know, just the stoic man that I think every kid kind of looks up to. You know, didn't talk a lot. He liked to laugh and joke. You can tell when he was serious. You can tell when he was playing around. He didn't come home with this tough guy cop attitude. Like he was his dad.
Yeah.
Him being a canine cop was pretty cool because the dog was always there. It was really neat to see the dogs work and how they interact with people.
That's something that's always fascinated me. I've always wondered, like, what's it like actually living with a dog like that?
Man, so his first dog was neat. His name was Tommy, and they get their dog straight from Germany, right. And they spend about 2 or 3 weeks breaking them of the German commands and putting them in their own. Tommy would come home. As soon as Tommy hit the house, Tommy was a house dog. And he was playing. We were playing with him, you know, messing around with him. Tommy ended up dying a few years later, and he got Mac. Mac was completely different. Mac knew when he was at work. Mac knew when he was home. I could ride in the same truck as my dad to DC because in the summertime we had nothing to do. Remember cornfields around. So we'd go into DC and we'd run around the mall, go to the museums and stuff. But I'd be in the same truck as this dog and my dad, like leaving the house. And then as soon as we get to work, I couldn't go anywhere near my dad.
Oh, really?
With the dog there, I couldn't touch him. I couldn't go near him without this dog going off and trying to bite my head off. Like he was one of the biggest German Shepherds I've ever seen. He was a long-haired German Shepherd, so it made him look even bigger.
Yeah.
And he was like the typical like professional police dog. That was him, but he was a little unhinged. Dad took him to a couple competitions. He actually won the national bomb detector dog competition with him. They were the only pair to qualify for first, second, or third.
Wow.
So yeah, they were good. Now, when it came to a street competition, there was no recall. Like you're supposed to be able to send your dog out and call him back. Nah, he was going
for blood. Yeah,
he was going, and there was no stopping him. So I can remember one of my dad's friends telling me that he was the only guy that ran from my dad, like let the dog bite him, because he was a bit crazy, and no one else wanted to do it because they knew they were getting bit regardless. So yeah, he was a bit wild, but it was neat. After it probably took a couple of years of my dad having him before I could actually like let him out of his kennel, let the house, feed him. And I used to say like he would listen to me. I think he just knew what to do and he tolerated me being there. Like he knew the drill. He was going to let out of his cage. He was going to get fed. There's going to be water there. I was the person to do it. And, you know, he allowed me to do so. And that was about it. He was definitely a very unique dog.
But your dad tried to talk you out of the Marines, and this is your cop dad, right? So the one that you
My grandmother for my real dad tried to talk me out of it.
Okay.
My real dad had no say.
Of course.
I was at that point where me and him, he had moved close by when I was in high school, like 15 minutes away, and I only saw him a few times. And when I went to graduate high school and turned 18, he was like, "Great, you can come see me." I'm like, "Bro, I've been 15 minutes away for the past 4 years. Like, you could have come saw me anytime." Like, no. And I kind of broke off with him. My real dad, or stepdad, the cop dad, he was supposed to. Okay.
I don't know. You keep freezing, man, so I keep pausing it, and that's fine because when I edit it later, it'll be all good. So I'll make it work, dude. No worries, no issues.
Yeah. So my cop dad, he was supposed to join the Navy with his friend, and kind of backed out and became a cop instead. So he was telling me he thought it was a great idea. So he loved it. My little brother joined. He's actually still in. He just got selected for Mass Arm. So really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Yeah, he's motor T, but he's working some high level job motor T. I don't know, phase mo inspector or something. So
you said you're the older brother?
Yeah.
So I relate to this, and I just kind of want to kind of take a second. Like, so I'm 5 years older than my younger sister, and she joined the Air Force. I didn't know why she had joined the Air Force at the time, but she is watching my career. And so, I wouldn't find out till many, many years later, down the road when she was pinning major on that I was the sole source of her inspiration for joining the Air Force and all of the things that she did. And I just want to ask you, like, now that your brother's being promoted to Master Sergeant, which is no small feat by any means, right? Like, how does that make you feel? Like, are you a little bit proud that you kind of were this leader to your younger sibling, whether you knew it or not?
Oh, very proud. Yeah. Extremely proud.
It's a cool feeling, right? Like,
yeah,
I mean, my career, but by all intents and purposes, I say this a million times, I was a mediocre soldier. Knowing what I know now, I could have been a much better soldier, and then to see the trajectory that my sister had in her career, it's like, man, you did it right. Like, you had all those tools I didn't have to do it the right way. And it's like, man, I'm glad that I could inspire that in you.
Yeah. I like to say I was good. My little brother is better.
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
And it's almost like I don't think he looks at it as the competition. I know I don't, but I know anything I do and he follows in my footsteps, he's going to do it better.
Right.
He's going to. Everything has been that way. So we grew up hunting. I never got a good shot on a deer until like 2 years ago.
You've been knocking them down since you were 10, right?
And he's sitting there jumping on a freaking log his first time hunting, and this 6-point walks out, and he's like, "Oh, a deer!" Bam.
I feel it, man.
He's the guy you're fishing next to, and he's getting all the bites, and you ain't getting shit.
Yeah.
But no, he's a great dude, and he kind of tells me that he's been following me, looking at me, and trying to. Like he's been wanting the Mass Sergeant to pass me, and I've been wanting him to get it. Just I know what it means, And I got to pin him. I got to pin the gunny chevrons on his collar, and that was big. That was really cool. That he had me do that. So it's maybe a little friendly competition, but for me, it's nothing but love. I love seeing him grow. I love seeing him. I love seeing him what he's going to do next. So everything he does is just. We know some of the same leaders in the Marine Corps, and they've got nothing but great things to say about him. Like my little brother's awesome.
Awesome,
man. Really proud, very, very proud of him.
So you got everything you wanted in the Marine Corps. You become a Marine Corps firefighter. You get to where did you end up going?
Like for
your first duty station,
Okinawa.
Okay. Oh man, that's a good one.
Yeah, I wanted as far away from anything that I had ever knew growing up as possible. It's like, let's just get the hell out of here. Let's go.
Why? Why did you want that for yourself?
I don't know. I've always maybe chasing the adventure of it. We only got 3 choices going out of MWest school: East Coast, West Coast, or overseas. Those were your choices.
Right.
So I was like, not going East Coast. That's where I grew up. I've been there, done that. It all looks the same. There's trees and hills all the way down until you get to, then you got beaches. But I was like, West Coast, they're kind of freaking crazy. I don't want to go out there. I was like, let's go overseas. And my buddies were like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go overseas. So we all just went.
Hell yeah. Was Okinawa, what was that experience like for you? I mean, how old were you when you joined? Were you pretty young? Were you like 18 like most of us?
Yeah.
So there's got to be some kind of culture shock there. You don't speak the language. Obviously, you are around other Americans, right? Because there is, Marine Corps base Okinawa there. But, boys will be boys, and there's going to be some romping around in the towns and all of that. I have heard – I had some buddies in the Army that got to go to Japan. I've talked to a couple of Marine Corps buddies that spent some time in Japan. I've heard nothing but great things about Okinawa. I hear it's like a dream destination. You guys, when you get stationed there, try to never leave.
Yeah, I was there for 6 years.
Jesus.
And I tried to. I did 5 consecutive. There was all 1-year tours back then, 1 year or 3 year if you're married. So I was doing all 1-year tours consecutively. And then at the end, I got married and I tried to change to a 3-year. And they were like, no, you're leaving. You
can't stay anymore.
People that I was there with in the beginning, I got there in 99, had left and come back. Like, bro, you're still freaking here? I'm like, yeah, I'm still here.
Not leaving. I'm not fucking leaving. This is not going to happen.
Okinawa was great, man. Okinawa was great. And people don't like the idea of going there because it is a small island. It's like 2 miles narrow at its narrowest point, and it's only 11 miles long.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a very big island. But there's anything you're into, they have. Like, they've got off-road clubs, dirt bike clubs, mountain biking clubs. There's diving, and anything else, anything they don't have, like, you can fly to another country and go do. And say you went snowboarding in Tokyo or just, wherever you go. Like, it was really, really cool. We got into just snorkeling and diving and drinking beer on the beach, and I was doing some mountain biking out there. My first year or so, first year I stayed on the bases and I stayed close anywhere I could walk. Mm-hmm. And then once I got my car, I was gone. I was always gone. And I had more local Okinawan Japanese friends than I did American guys. I was hanging out with the locals all the time. And that got me into some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, man. I did that throughout my career, particularly towards the end of my career when I got to Washington. I primarily would just make civilian friends and hang out with civilians. I don't know why it happened. I don't know how it happened, but it ended up being a blessing because that's where I would get out of the Army in the Med Board. And then I would stay for another almost 10 years. You know what I mean? Like because I had built those relationships and those friends. And I think before I really joined the Army a lot, I tell myself for the travel. Unfortunately, my career didn't work out that way. I got stuck my first 9 years at Fort Stewart, three deployments to Iraq, with a stop move in there when I had PCS orders to Alaska. So I didn't get to do the traveling that I wanted to do. And I stopped trying to make friends because I knew, my time was coming, to leave that place. And now you're going to have to start a whole new friend group and all that bullshit. Right. And then for whatever reason, I got to Washington. It was like, well, I guess we're just going to make friends this way. And it served me well, man. So I relate to that a ton. Overall, what was your experience? I mean, if you kept extending, I assume that leadership was good. You were loving the job. Was there any thing that you would change about your time at Okinawa?
Maybe I wouldn't drink so much. It got weird there for a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. I was actually supposed to get out. Me and my buddies, we were just one tight group of guys, and every year it was, where are we going, or are we going to stay here? So we said, fuck it, let's stay every year. And at one point I was engaged to another Marine who went to Camp Pendleton, and they were like, well, he's leaving because he's engaged. And I'm like, bro, like, if we're staying, we're staying. Like, if we're doing this, let me know. And I got the papers right here. Like, let me know. And obviously that relationship did not work. But extended, and I was supposed to get out. I was awaiting the Whiskey 95 orders. Like, I had 3 months to my EAS. I was supposed to get out and only do 4 years. And all of my buddies were like, we were all like a month apart. And I was the baby. I was the last one. So slowly they're all leaving and I was just stuck there. I went on this train deployment to Hawaii, went to HCAX with this guy. He didn't convince me to join, but he made a comment like, you shouldn't be getting out. And I kind of blew it off like, well, fuck it, I'm waiting orders. I'm getting out anyway. And just being around him, he was probably one of the best leaders I've been under, like I was under my whole time. And I was like, if there's more guys like him, then this ain't so bad. Mm-hmm. And then I got to thinking that, because they teach us in the Marine Corps, build your leadership toolbox. Everybody you come across, you can take good things and bad things from. Every leader, either the good or bad, you can learn from. And just take something from and put in your toolbox, even if it's not how to do something. So I was still young. I was building my little leadership toolbox, and I had a lot of things from him in that box. And I was like, you know what? I was like, fuck it. Let's just stay in. And I got lucky that my EAS was in October. So it put me past the fiscal year. So new boat spaces opened up for re-enlistment. So I had to wait till October 1 to submit my package. So I'm literally 2 weeks away from an EAS and I'm trying to re-enlist.
Yeah, nothing like waiting until the last minute, right? Yeah. So, that's awesome, dude.
And that was it.
That was it. 22 years you would be in for all of it. So almost got out at 4 years, ended up doing 22 years. You served as a drill instructor. We'll get to that. But first you went on a deployment in 2009. Where did you go?
So I was still a sergeant. I had a little hiccup in Okinawa where I got NJP'd. They didn't take my rank. I really didn't get punished. I was actually found not guilty on 5 of the 6 charges that they had against me. But I come out of that pretty clean, but it stayed on my record, and that kept me from getting promoted for a long time. So 2009, went to Iraq. I was in Ubaidi, which is near old Al-Qaim, or right on the Euphrates River. It's pretty much a little combat outpost. A lot of patrols ran. Yeah, so I was with 271, MWSS 271 out of North Carolina. We went to Iraq. We deployed as a super squadron. So we took over all the air support for pretty much all of Iraq, from Al-Assad west. We were covering, I want to say, 7 different landing zones or COPs. And I was the lowest ranking person to get in charge of like a staff NCOIC of a deployment. It was, gunny staff sergeant than me. And it's kind of funny. Like, it was something out of a movie. I thought I was getting messed with, because we're standing there. They called all the leaders in. They got all these intel folders of where they were going. And I was like, cool, we can know, I've never heard of this place. And they're passing out the folders to everybody, and they get to me and there's no folder. I'm like, haha, joke's on me, like, whatever. And they're like, we don't know where you're going. I'm like, bullshit. Like, you're sending me somewhere. Like, how do you not know where you're sending me? Like, what? Like, we don't know. I'm like, and I'm like, yeah, you guys, for a while, like a week or two, like, you guys are fucking with me. Like, where the hell am I going? And then find the mask on, you got pissed. It's like, I don't know. Like, there's no intel on where you're going. It was just set up, whatever. Like, we don't know. I'm like,
so you're just kind of floating in the wind, not really doing much, or are they just making you the bitch boy?
Like, they just didn't know. They didn't know much about it. So they knew how many people to send. And I think it was a mix of they didn't know and nobody really wanted to find out. So
it's funny how that works, right?
But luckily, I went when we landed in Ubaidi. We got off the Osprey, which is a wild ride.
I hate those fucking things, dude. The worst fucking ride I've ever been on in my entire life, ever.
I'm used to the 53s. It's a nice floating, just let's go. And kind of started off the same. That thing just took off, and it's like, oh, this is kind of nice. And it kind of just started turning direction, and then you hear the rotors flip, and it was just like gone.
And that's my problem with it, because not only when they take off right vertically, they just pin you to this cardboard seat that's in there, right? And you're already, and I don't know how it is for you guys, but like you guys kind of treat Army dudes like shit when we have to use your equipment. So they put way too many people in there, and you're like sitting on rucksacks at the end of the bench. And then the biggest problem I had is when they transition to straight and level flight and rotate those props, it just throws you off the end of the bench. There's nothing you can do about it. And it's so uncomfortable. And like I said, I mean, they stuffed all of us into one Osprey, and, you know, no regard for any of us, bags falling over because they stack them in the middle. And I hated everything about it. It's like the worst airframe I've ever been on, but I digress, man. You know, they're cool in principle, but like when you fly on them, I fucking hated it.
Yeah. I kind of felt like they were trying to break records that day, and maybe it's every day they fly. I don't know. If I was flying them, I'd try and go as fast as I could. But they made the trip from Al Asad to Ubaidi in like 15 minutes, which normally it takes a 53 like 45 minutes to do. So it was fast. We got a rocket shot at us when we landed. We didn't know it, but we landed. We threw all the bags out the back, and we actually threw our bag on top of a rocket head. Like, it was.
That's great.
Yeah, it was like, oh. So we had to clear the LZ real quick for that. But getting off the bird, I saw a guy that I was actually in Okinawa with.
Nice.
Like, he was the staff NCOIC of the place. He gave me the rundown. There was 5 of us firefighters. There was 5 refuelers. We had a corpsman, and then we had an air boss, a captain, who was already there. His name was Twitch, because he had a little head twitch. So he was grounded, but when he was talking to you, his head would twitch. Good dude. And yeah, we just ran LZs for the next ran that LZ for the next 7 months.
So nothing eventful for you on the deployment, nothing super traumatic. Did you have to deal with anything like most of us dealt with, or was it pretty nonchalant? I was there in 2000. I was actually in Iraq with you in 2009. It was my 3rd deployment, so we would have been in BIOP, and actually staying at FOB Constitution, basically running QRF for all of Iraq. So basically for us, the sun would go down, we'd get a call to go take care of civilians who hit IEDs or whatever it was on the supply routes, because, you know, everything was drawing down at that time in Iraq anyway. And so I know for me, that was my 3rd deployment, and it was so boring. I don't think we shot a single round that deployment. We were really just out. God, dude, I spent 14 hours one day looking for a fucking mortar tube that was buried in a field. We didn't find it until like the very last minute, after coming off of an all-nighter out taking care of some civilian who got hit by an IED. And it was just a very nonchalant deployment, and that's the only reason I ask.
It wasn't too much. We never left the wire. We didn't go on patrols. I only had 3 or 4 guys, and the trucks would come back like beat the shit. Like there was a part of town that they would roll through that they said was still loyal to Saddam, even though he was gone. Little kids with rocks breaking bulletproof glass. Like, it was just not a good place to be. They got hit pretty hard one day. They RKG-3s and IEDs just blew their convoy to shit. That was probably the worst day. We had mortar attacks. They never landed anywhere close. I think the closest one was maybe 100 yards from the wire. But for the most part, it was pretty calm. A lot of our medevacs we ran were on either civilians or their little self-defense force.
Right.
One of the guys we sent out, they were working together. They were the Iraqi army working together on a post watching a soccer game, and they start arguing about the game, and one guy shot the other one.
Dude, I get it. My second deployment, we were in Heat, actually fell under the Marine Corps. So you guys were in charge of us. And so that was my 16-month deployment. And so I was with all the different MEFs, first, second, and fifth. And I actually saw one of them a second time before I would leave. So they had rotated in and out twice before I was leaving. And we were in charge of pay operations between the ING and the IP, so the Iraqi police and the Iraqi National Guard. And we would always go across the only bridge across the river for like 100 miles to the one little station, and they would be on separate sides of it. And one day, dude, it was like a scene out of a freaking movie. Like all the IPs are on the left side of the parking lot of this IP station and all the INGs, and they're just waiting to get paid. And one of them's got some beef with another one. And dude, it's like chaos. They're fucking shooting each other. Machine guns on trucks are going off. And we're talking like there's maybe only 20 feet between the rows of vehicles and they're just going at it. And we're like, what? We just wanted to pay them. You know what I mean? Like it's insane the shit that they will do. So I definitely relate to that shit, because that was probably, of all my combat experience, that's probably one of the most terrifying times, because you have these two large forces fighting each other, and I think we were a squad at the time. It's like, what are we going to do here? Like, we're just going to leave. That's what we're going to do. But
luckily we had a decent sized grunt element on Ubaidi that would just run patrols. They ran patrols. Eventually, once we got, I don't know, there was a definite turning point during my deployment where they stopped worrying about us and they went back to fighting each other out in town. Because one of the medevacs we ran was a 3-year-old little girl that got blown up in a car bomb.
Yeah.
And that and when, like, that was probably messed up when you pick up a litter and there's like, this is empty, and then you look and there's a little girl in there half blown to shit. Like that fucked you up.
That was the hardest part for me, man, was having to deal with civilian injuries and then, U.S. force injuries, right? Like going out and picking up your buddy's arm or leg, cleaning up guts off of fucking everything. Like it wasn't the killing. It was brothers and sisters and civilians that had, absolutely no control over what was happening to them. That was the hardest part for me.
Yeah.
So
there's a Bronze Star recipient that died out in Ubaidi on patrol, Brendan Lara. That's a good read. They're just on patrol, and they got lit up by IEDs. And then these guys came out of nowhere with RKG3s, blew one right through them. We brought him back to shock trauma, but there was just so much blood. Like he wasn't going to make it.
So you get through this deployment. I assume that was probably towards 2010-ish. What's next for you in your career? I know your next big significant milestone is being a drill instructor, and I'm really interested to talk to you about that because I think the Marine Corps drill instructor is kind of one of the more prestigious drill instructors from across the military. It's just, even in my own eyes, I was never a drill sergeant. I never wanted to be a drill sergeant for the Army. But there's just something about Marine Corps drill sergeants. So you were out there for 3 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how was that 3 years, and how did that actually shape you? Because I feel like that probably was a significant milestone in your career that would teach you a lot of things about leadership and you as a person. So curious to get your take on what you took away from that. Did you enjoy it? Am I right in thinking like you guys are a kind of a next level drill instructor, if you will?
I like to think so. Some of it's probably a little bit of pride, but I was at a point in my career after the deployment where I got promoted to staff sergeant. And it was time to do something. Like for longevity in the Marine Corps, you have to give back. You have to do recruiting, embassy duty, one of the big B billets, one of the big billets you have to go do. And I really wanted embassy duty, but the wife wasn't a U.S. citizen, so that canceled me for that. I'm not a desk guy. I can't sit behind a desk. I go retarded staring at a computer screen all day. So I'm like, I'm not doing recruiting. It wasn't the work. It was the thought of being chained to an office, to a desk for so many hours a day. I was like, no, I'm not. I was like, I always told myself, I kind of joked growing up in the Marine Corps, I was like, I could be a drill instructor, but I don't feel like putting forth the energy to do it. And when I made the decision to go DI, I told my wife. She laughed at me. I told all the guys I worked with. They laughed at you. Not that like physically I wouldn't be able to do it. It's just that persona of a drill instructor. Like there's pictures of me, and they're like, I can't believe that's you. Like you're intense and you're screaming and like bro, that's not you. Like that's not your style. And that was probably the hardest part. I called being a drill instructor the highest and lowest point of my career. Mm-hmm. I went late. I was 10 years older than any other drill instructor in the company.
Oof, that's got its own set of challenges because now you got to keep up.
Yeah, you can't fall back. And I remember there's one day, and I'm not prideful. There's some things I really don't give a shit about. And we're doing it was one of the first runs for one. It was like my first or second cycle. We're doing a PT session, and it's a 2-mile squat ability run where they break all the recruits up into like rabbits and turtles, and then they got people in the middle, and they needed drill instructors to distribute whenever. You would think they would actually know, like, hey, this drill instructor's fast, he's going to go over there. This drill instructor's slow, he's going to go over there. But they were like, hey, there was one other drill instructor with the fast group. And they're like, we need drill instructors with the fast group. I was like, fuck it. I'm not fast, but I'll go.
Oh, and, God.
Yeah,
this is brutal.
No, I was struggling to keep up. I kept up about 90% of the way. And then at the end, they kicked, and they're like, dude, you fell out. I was like, I didn't slow down. Y'all just went faster.
Yeah, I got nothing left, man. Like
it was young. I was like, what the fuck? And, the recruit saw that. I was like, I don't fucking care. Like, you needed people. I was like, why'd you join the group? Because you called for people to join it. No one else moved, so I did. Right. And he started to get mad at me, and I was like, look, dude, you asked for someone to step up. I stepped up. And I don't care what you say. My ability ends at some point. I kept up as long as I could. And that was it. And
you guys have another gear that I don't have. Like it's physiological at this point. You can't get blood out of a turnip, right?
No,
like
I thought I was still, and mind you, at the time I was running 3 miles in about 22 minutes. So that's like middle of the pack for the Marine Corps, but that's still not slow. A 22 minute
8 minute miles.
Yeah, a 22-minute 5K is pretty decent. But these guys were just running like 17, 18-minute 3 miles. And I was like, well, now when I volunteered for the fast group to say no.
Right.
But no, it was kind of funny. Halfway through, the first sergeants changed out, and the first sergeant that came in, I was actually a PFC with in MOS school.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so we knew each other. Some of the older guys in the company didn't like that. I didn't buck the system. I didn't fight back. I went there to work. I went there with the purpose of longevity in the Marine Corps, to experience being a drill instructor, lead, and all that stuff. I got down there. I found it was a little different in the beginning. But me being older, and like I was already at 15, 16 years in the Marine Corps when I went down there. Mm-hmm. I know these guys are on their second tour, 5, 6, 7 years. So there was a lot of power tripping. There was a lot of games being played, and I didn't play the games. So I kind of got pushed into a corner of, this guy doesn't want to work. And I kind of told him, like, I'm here only to work. Like, that's the only reason why I'm here. I was like, you want to play fucking stupid ass games? Like, I'm not a part of that. That's not part of my billet description. And
also, like, how do you get the idea that I don't want to work? I'm at 15 fucking years in the Marine Corps. I came here to work. Like, this is what I have to do to progress my career, you know?
Yeah, so there was definitely a big shift in my perspective when it came to leadership when I hit the depot. I call it the lowest and the highest point of my career because I probably saw the best and the worst out of leadership there. You know, you think the focus is on the recruits, but when I first got there, it was on each other and what everybody else was doing. Once my class of DI school got moved through the company, we started taking over. Then it became fun. Then it became the bill to do. We had such camaraderie. We looked out for each other, and the recruits saw it. We put out a better product, but they would tell us at the end of the cycle, like, "Do you guys hate us that much?" And we were like, "What do you mean? Like, we see you come out of the duty hut. We see you come on deck, and when you're with each other, you're laughing, you're joking. But as soon as you turn towards us, it was like game time. It would change, and the expression was just hate and discontent. And we joked like, yeah, we actually do hate you guys that much. But it was the job. It was the roles. We were actually able to step back and not carry that. Because the first group, when I first got there, it was, I'm a senior, I'm a J, like, you're going to talk to me. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, you're an admin staff sergeant who's never led anybody in your life. I just walked off leading 30 guys, you know, on a daily basis. And you're going to tell me I don't know leaders. Like,
it sounds like what you're describing with your class coming in and filtering through the ranks of the billet of drill instructor, you were eliminating some toxic leadership, essentially, is what was happening. And I relate to that a ton because our careers kind of mirror each other. You came in 99, I came in 03. I know what leadership looked like from 03 to about 05, 06. And then the surge started to happen. And then promotions started to happen at a ridiculous rate. And I mean, I was seeing company first sergeants, make an E8 in 8 years, which is fucking insane. Like, there's no way that anybody can get promoted that fast and be good at the billet that they're in, because you just haven't had enough time to learn, the job above you or whatever. And that breeds toxic leadership. And it destroyed the infantry in the Army. It destroyed it. I mean, so much so that when I was getting med boarded in 2015, I would go, after I got med boarded, I would go every year to the Rock, which is our memorial for everybody that had been lost on Memorial Day. And we would do that. A group of us kind of just go cry our tears, shoot our shots, and, not a big event or anything like that. But 2 years after I got out, Division decided to put on a whole dog and pony show. And I was looking around at this dog and pony show, these guys in Class A uniforms, no combat hashes, no combat awards, just like they just forced all of us out. All of us. And I'm looking around and it's like, we, for like 50 years, that Rock has been on Memorial Day, just a place for individual veterans or active duty guys to go uninterrupted, no ceremonies, to go pay their respects, cry their tears, shoot their shots, get whatever closure they need and move on. And 7th ID just decides one day we need to put on a Division dog and pony show. And it's like, you're crushing everything. Like, you're ruining it for everybody. And that's the kind of shit I'm talking about. You know what I mean? And it sounds like that's what you were dealing with at the DI billet.
Yeah. So it was a microscope, man. Like, if you could, exactly what you're talking about, but on a small scale. Before I got to Alpha Company on the depot, they had just relieved over half of the company leadership, the drill instructors, for recruit abuse and other things. So we had guys that had been one cycle and now they're a senior drill instructor. Mm-hmm. 2 cycles and now they're running they're in a, and I give them a little bit of grace, a little bit of credit, because they were put into a billet they weren't ready for. Mm-hmm. And they're not going to.
They were set up to fail. They were set up to fail.
Exactly. Yeah. And failure was not an option. So it was, I'm going to do what I know how to do. And that's just push through this. No, they probably could have done without some of the bullshit and some of the stupid ass games they tried to play. But the first platoon I checked into, it was staff sergeant, sergeant, staff sergeant, and then me. And when I hit it, the other two staff sergeants have already tried to fight the sergeants in front of the recruits because they felt disrespected. So they wanted nothing to do with another staff sergeant. And I told the sergeants, like, if you do straight disrespect me, we're going to have a problem. So I'm not going to do it in front of the recruits. I'm not going to. We're
going to take it behind closed doors like a professional leader.
Yeah, I'm from a billet-driven MOS, not rank-driven. Crash fire rescue, the firefighting job is billet-driven. It's based on your abilities, and if you can do the job and lead, then you get pushed up into other billets. Doesn't matter what your rank is. I was a lance corporal in charge of corporals and sergeants at one point, but there is a level of respect. They're still higher ranking than you, even though you're sitting in a higher billet. There's a level of respect that's got to come there. And I get it. We put on a show for the recruits, and that's one thing. And I never called them out in front of everybody, but I made the switch there to, instead of becoming, a leader of Marines, I wanted to be a leader of leaders. Like I wanted to teach people how to lead properly. And that's what I got out of the depot. Because I saw the bad and went to the good. And I was like, this could be so much better. And my class was like, we just saw how we could do it better, and we did. And there's a thing called training proficiency on the depot where they take your recruits' PFT scores, they take all their scores that they're graded in, and they weigh it against how many recruits you dropped. Mm-hmm. So a lot of companies that have a very high training proficiency or very high scores in their PFT and whatever, they have a very high drop rate because the ones that can't keep up, they just get rid of. We didn't drop very many once we took over. We said they're here and we're going to train them. So instead of trying to drop recruits, we taught them how to eat properly. We taught them what workouts they can do on their own time to get faster, to get stronger, to get better. And we had such a high training proficiency that we got investigated.
What?
They're like,
wait a second. Hold on a minute. This is 2013 to 16-ish, right?
Yeah. So we're probably talking, this is like 2015, like middle of 14 to 2015.
Okay. This is really interesting. I'm glad we're having this conversation because I think military-wide, this was an issue, but I noticed it because I was in the Army. We were getting privates out of basic training who couldn't pass push-ups. And I would call back to my drill sergeant buddies who were on the trail, be like, yo, brother, like, what are you fucking sending us? Like, you're sending us dudes who can't pass push-ups. He's like, look, man, Big Army says it's your job. Our job is to just get them through basic training. And I'm like, but you're not getting them through basic training. They're coming to me and they can't pass a PT test. They're immediately flagged as soon as they get to me. Like if there's any case in the Army for anybody who should be fit to come to a new unit, it's a brand new basic training private.
Yeah.
And that didn't make sense to me. It's like, what are we doing here? And now you're telling me you're getting investigated because of your training proficiency? Like, that's what you want.
Yeah, because it was unheard of. They didn't know what was going on. Because the status, when I was there, the status quo, all right, the recruits get 20 minutes to eat their lunch, to eat their chow, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 20 minutes. But someone always wants to squeeze more out of the schedule. Either the senior or the J, I got to get 5 minutes of drill time. I got to get 2 minutes of drill time here. So make them eat fast. So we'd push through the chow line. And when I first got there, it was hurry up and eat, hurry up and eat. And as soon as the guide sat down, 20 minutes started. And when he was done, the platoon was done.
Yeah.
So the guy would slam his food and they would get out and leave.
Yeah.
So it was pushing through chow. It was looked at as weak as taking care of recruits. My first day, like I stepped in on deck and I'm walking, I'm running around screaming at people. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. But I look at this kid at the end of the line and he had pink eye so bad that it was like running.
The crusties?
Down. Oh, it wasn't even crusty. It was just goopy,
just leaking.
It was the worst case I've ever seen. And I was like, I went back and we went into duty. I was like, that kid's fucked up. Like, what the, like it was almost like it was that bad. I was like, And I can't go out there and be like, hey, recruiter, you okay? That's not my job. I'm the new hat. I'm the kill hat. I'm supposed to hate everybody and just thrash them. And they're like, so that's his problem. I'm like, but it's going to spread through the rest of the platoon, and we're going to have half the platoon on fucking sick call. Like, I saw this as a brand new drill instructor. So I had pink eye drops that someone gave to me that I just went in and I left them on the sink. This is after light, so the recruits are supposed to be in bed. I left them on the sink, and I just yelled at the recruit and made him. I yelled at him until he went and washed his face. Like, you fucking nasty, disgusting thing! Go wash your damn face. And when he got in there, he saw the drops, and he put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah, so you had to play mind games with him because that
was the only way that kid was going to get any kind of help. But
that's
I learned,
bullshit, man.
You need to have high scores. You need healthy recruits. To have high scores, you need nutrition recruits. So instead of forcing them through chow, we taught them, hey, kid, like you're kind of fucking fat. Like, don't be grabbing.
Yeah, that one wasn't bad at all. Sorry.
No good.
Yeah, man. No, and what you're talking about, dude, this is the kind of shit. Like, I don't know if you saw this in your career, and we're gonna go way over time. I hope that's okay with you, because I think this is important for people to understand
we're good.
as we talk about this stuff and tell the stories to help other veterans who are struggling with transition. Like, your career is not unique in some of the shitty things that you experienced, and so over your career, did you notice this shift in kind of like the way things were being done? Like, when you said, the privates or new recruits were like, do you guys all hate us that much? I also, at basic training in, June of 2003, saw our drill sergeants. They had a box that framed the door to their office. And as long as they were standing in the box, you were allowed to do whatever you want, whatever position they left you in, whatever. And they would. You would see the same thing that you were talking about. They would joke and laugh with one another, but the second their feet stepped out of that box, it was, we're going to kill you. You know what I mean? Like, we are ruthless. But then for us, towards the end, as we're getting ready to graduate, they actually leveled with us as human beings and as really leaders. To be completely honest with you, like, I remember the last 3 or 4 days, the scariest drill sergeant we had, Drill Sergeant Dodge, I'll never forget him. I don't think he was actually as scary as people had made him out to be. He was actually probably the best one that we had. But he sat down with us for like 4 hours and just answered questions about Big Army, what we could expect, what combat was going to be like, because, some of these dudes had already had a rotation to Afghanistan because Afghanistan kicked off in 2001. And so, we were able to then delineate, okay, they were doing what they needed to do to train us. And that makes sense, right? And now that we have made it through this gauntlet and proven that we're worthy to go to the Big Army, let's level with these guys and let's prepare them to go to their units, because they don't have a fucking clue. Your unit's not going to be like basic training. But then over the course of my career, I would notice as we would get new privates in, it seemed like nobody had done that for them. They didn't know what to expect when they got there. They couldn't pass PT tests or, some of that other shit. And so, like, did you notice that across your career as well?
We noticed the change in mindsets.
Yeah.
With the new guys.
Maybe that's what it was. Maybe that's what it was.
That's the biggest thing. Nobody ships from boot camp unless they can meet the requirements. There's basic requirements to go to boot camp, and then there's basic requirements to leave. And nobody can leave boot camp unless they meet those basic requirements. I went down to the depot with this romantic idea. I'm going to weed out all the non-hackers. Well, the thing that I found out like halfway through, about halfway through, is that you're not there to weed them out. You're there to train them.
Right.
Like, once they step foot, like, they're pretty much, as long as they're going to graduate. So it's your job to get them through all that. You got to train them. You got to get them through everything, get their scores up, get their stats up, get their strength up. And that was my job. Dude, what I noticed, and it wasn't really prevalent until I left the depot, that there was a decline. There was a decline, and the Marine Corps' response was not to lower the standards, but actually raise them. They started raising they were getting such low quality in some of the combat arms MOSs. Like the minimum was like 3 pull-ups to get into the combat arms professions. They raised it to 6.
Really?
Yeah. So they started raising minimum requirements. And that's one thing I learned as a drill instructor is that wherever you set the bar, people are going to meet it.
Yeah.
Like if they don't meet it, then they're going to go somewhere else. But wherever you set that bar, like if you set it low, that's as high as they're ever going to go. But if you raise it up to here, they'll get there.
Yeah.
And you'll have to work and push them. But like wherever you set the bar at, they'll meet it. So put that fucking bar high. Like put it high.
That actually resonates a lot because the Army used to do something. So the max score you can get on a PT test used to be 300. I have no idea what it is now. It's a completely different test. But then, at least for part of my career, we did extended scale. So there was a whole format to get you more points over 300 after you had maxed, push-ups, sit-ups, and the run. And I started to notice after we took that away, that's when kind of the mindset really started to shift. What you're talking about wherever you set that bar is where people are going to meet it. You took away the extended scale. So now there's zero incentive to get more than a 300, to try harder than I need to, right? And we both know, at least I know from my entire Army experience and from having hundreds of conversations with veterans about this stuff, PT score is heavily weighed for everything, promotion-wise, schools-wise, in every branch. I don't give a shit what branch you're in. It just is. PT score is always going to be the deciding factor. But now you've got this, okay, you've got 10 dudes with a 300, 10 dudes all with a 1-1 on their NCOERs. How do we choose? Because you took away the extended scale. All they're doing is the minimum to make themselves the most competitive. You know what I mean? And I often wonder, like, how many times did we get it wrong because we got rid of that? You know what I mean? Like what you're saying. And I think while that may be a counterintuitive tactic to raise standards and make it harder when you're having a quality issue, I think there's something to that. And I'm willing to bet it probably worked. Yeah,
because what they did when they raised the minimum standards to get into the certain MOSs, what they also did was throughout the, like you call Big Army, throughout the fleet of the Fleet Marine Force, is they changed the scoring of the PFTs, and it was by age. And you would think the older you are, the less you had to do.
Nope.
But they reversed it. Yep. You've been in the Marine Corps for 15 years. You should be able to do 1 million freaking pull-ups. So they actually, the longer you were in, the more you had to do to get a higher score.
That's how it was my whole career. It's like 17 to 21, 21 to 30, 30 to 38, I think. And it gets harder until over the third tier, right? And then as you get older, it has to decline because physiologically you're not going to be able to make those numbers. I don't care how, you'd be a 1 in a million at that point. You know what I mean? So I definitely saw the value in that too, particularly like if you wanted to go on and do anything special operations, you were held accountable to the harder standard, not the lower standard. So I think that's another brilliant move, man, because I saw it work, in my branch.
Yeah. What it changed from was, it was before, I can't remember the score before, but it was easier for older guys to get a first class PFT. And that was the goal. Get a first class PFT. Just keep a first class. If you couldn't get a 300, a perfect, at least get a first class. So they lowered the score from, it was like 225 for a first. I think the old man score was like a 200. But once they changed it, like you had a lot of staff NCOs, a lot of older guys, not to say older, but they're like around 30 to 35. That no longer had a first-class PFT because they were just coasting. It was the minimum standard that they had to do, even though it wasn't the minimum. Like you could still get a second or a third-class PFT, but you weren't competitive unless you had a first. So you had the little first check on the, on your fit rent, like that's what you looked for. And once that came out, like it took a couple of years. There were some guys that were put on the body composition program. The guys put on physical fitness regimen because they weren't. Like they've been in Marine Corps 10, 15 years, but they couldn't get a first-class PFT. So it was an eye-opener. And at first people were disgruntled and pissed off, but in a few years, you saw those people kind of go away, and people started meeting the standard, and it drives excellence. It drives, like, if you want a higher quality, like, raise the standard.
Yeah,
you'll get it.
Makes sense, man. So you come off the trail. You've only got a few years left in the Marine Corps. It's getting to be time to retire, and you filled out the form to come on the show, and you talked about your purpose, right? We lose that purpose when we get out, and it's the two most common things in almost 103 of these that I've done at this point is, bar none, loss of identity and loss of purpose. And there's a lot of reasons for that, particularly guys like us who join young, spend our whole adult lives doing, the military thing. We never have a chance to figure out who we are as people. So let's talk about, why did you decide to retire? What was your transition like? I know you were doing some things to prepare yourself to get out, i.e. starting a couple of businesses before you got out. And we'll get to that. But the reason I started this show, man, genuinely, is to be the guy I didn't have in transition. I know when I was in that dark place, sitting doom scrolling on my couch, gaining a bunch of weight, if I would have seen a conversation like the one that we're having now, knowing all the shit that we've all been through, I wouldn't have felt so alone. And it may have sparked something in me to make that change that I was unable to make otherwise. And so I like to spend as much time as necessary on the transition. And this is where I really genuinely want you to be as vulnerable as you can, because that's how we all heal and move past all this stuff, is to hear these raw stories about what your challenge was like. I've been very open about mine. You can go listen to any one of these episodes. You can go find me on other people's podcasts. It's actually really cathartic for me to talk about that stuff. It lets me let go of a lot of stuff. So, dude, the floor is yours. I want to hear about your transition. I want to hear about your mindset, some of the difficult things that you went through, any substance abuse issues that you had, because I know the majority of us do have them. It's rare when I talk to guys who, had good leaders that prepared them for their transition. But, tell me what your transition was like. Tell us what your transition was like, and some of the things that you experienced that could be better, that warrants the work that we're out here doing. Yeah.
So, luckily I had gotten over my substance abuse younger. Like, there was a time I was drinking, especially in Okinawa. I was drinking. We would pre-flight with a fifth of Jim Beam, me and my buddy each, and then we would go out to the bars. Like, we were. It didn't. I thought it was funny at the time. I look back and I kind of put myself in my leader's position, but there was times where one of our leaders would pull us aside and they would say, "Can you guys not drink so much tonight? Like, we kind of need you on point in the morning." And we kind of looked at each other like,
"Is this a problem? Holy shit."
But we just laughed it off. We're like, yeah, whatever, we'll be okay. But looking back, I'm like, fuck, that was like, and that was from one of the guys that we looked up to in, like, the field and the drinking aspect. Because he didn't get us into drinking, but he was one that we would fucking drink with. And he was the one telling us, y'all need to slow down.
Well, it's a culture thing, right? Like, it doesn't, any branch you go to, young privates, that's what's happening. It's just, I mean, my first day in the unit, even though those guys fucking hated me because I had no combat patch, no combat experience. And I got there between 2 weeks and a month after they came home from the invasion. So life for me as a private sucked balls. Bad. It was rough. But at the end of all of it, knocking on your door, we're going to the shopette. You want any alcohol, right? Like, you're a part of this team, and this is what we do. We barbecue at the barracks and we drink a lot. And it's impossible to avoid, because if you don't participate, then you're not part of the team. At least that's what I experienced. You know what I mean? And so you just kind of do it, and then it becomes a problem. And in your case, you don't even realize, like, oh, I got this leader that I respect who's drinking with us telling us that our drinking is a problem. Like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And it didn't click in my head until I was actually having a conversation with my wife now. She was actually fixing to end the relationship because I drank so much. And it didn't ever hit me as a problem. Even when the leaders were talking to me, it didn't ever hit me as a problem until she said that. Like, we're gonna be done. And I quit cold turkey for about 5 years.
Good
like,
for
didn't drink a drop for 5 years. And then it's actually when I got back from Iraq, like, the first week back, like, I've been dry for 5 years and the deployment. And we go to a Halloween party and I drink a fifth of Captain Morgan, and that was probably one of the last times I got blackout drunk was 2010. Like,
wow.
So I drink now. I drink. I love bourbon. I don't drink as much beer because it packs on the pounds, but
yeah,
it's controlled. I have 3 sons, and they're at the age now where they're young men, and they need to see that's kind of the drive, the family.
Show them what right looks like.
My boys got to see, like, they're going to experience alcohol, they're going to experience drugs, they're going to experience it all, and they got to learn that it can be a part of your life, but it can't control your life.
Yes, sir.
And that drove me to be good. That's what drives me. And there's times where I get the feeling that I need to fucking pound a fifth of, and that's when I step away from it. That's when I don't have a drink.
Yep.
You know, I applaud the people that go through it and they push it and they don't go around it. But I think it's almost stronger to be around it and not do it than it is to avoid it completely.
I took the same approach when I quit. So when I found out I was getting med boarded, I fell way down that substance abuse hole. I was drinking 2 gallons of Seagram 7 a week just at home before I would go close the bar every night. Right. So I spent
I was listening to your podcast yesterday, the latest one you were talking to, and I heard that. I was like, I've fucking been there.
It was rough, man. It's expensive and you feel like shit all of the time. And I did the same thing. I think for a year, I didn't do it the right way. I don't suggest anybody quit drinking cold turkey, particularly with as much as I was drinking, because I just bought a PlayStation 4 with Destiny, the video game, and locked myself in my apartment. Because I was in the med board process. I wasn't accountable to anybody. I basically made my own fucking rules. I really just had to show up for Monday morning formation, check in with my first sergeant and be like, hey, I'm working on this week. And then I would just go lock myself back in my apartment and play the video game so I wouldn't drink. But after, I think, 6 months of that isolation, and it's really funny because the people who quit going out with you, getting free drinks because they can't keep up, when you disappear and decide to make a change for yourself, they'll be the first people to blow your phone up. Like, are we drinking tonight? Are we going out? What are we doing? What's going on? So fighting that. And then, I decided at some point I didn't want alcohol to have that kind of control over me. So I would go back to the bar, but I would only drink water. And I would do that for another 6 months. And then I got to the point where I was like, okay, I want to go out and I want to have a drink with my friends. And it doesn't have to be more than a drink. And it's got to be something that I can do. And so finally got to that point. Now I might have 2 or 3 beers or, some whiskey once a year. I think the last time I drank was the Super Bowl last year. So usually around football season, I might have a couple of drinks just with some friends watching a game. And that's about it. I have no desire to drink anymore. It makes me sleepy the second it touches my lips. And I know a lot more about it. It's poison. It's poison it's detrimental to your overall health. Just one drink, even in my opinion. So I relate to what you're talking about so much, man. Like the challenge of deciding to not let this stuff control you. That's a big fucking deal.
And if you want to talk about vulnerability, I'll open up to this. When I was in Okinawa and all my boys left, we were drinking so much that when I was on night shift at the firehouse, I would have to drink to get through the night.
Yeah.
If I didn't, and quitting scared me because yes. I was in the firehouse. I knew I shouldn't be drinking at the fire. Like, you're on call, dude. Like, what the and I'm trying to sleep and I'm twilighting. I'm between that point where I'm awake and I'm asleep, and I'm talking. I'm having conversations with people that I think are sitting there, but they've left the island years ago. Like, they're not around anymore. And I'm like, kind of snapped, like, what the and it, like, they were just sitting in that freaking chair and I was talking to them. And I started, start fucking shaking and sweating. You're like, fuck this. And you go take a couple drinks and you can go to sleep. Like that, it scared me to quit. And then when my now wife, like, we were married 20 years, but when she said it to me, like, losing her and the kids scared me more than quitting. That's when it was easy. That I set it down and I didn't touch it for 5 years.
It puts things into perspective when it's coming from the person you love the most. I get that 100%, man.
And I didn't accept it. When she first said it, I fought her on it. I was like, no. I was like, I don't have a fucking problem.
That's
like,
what we do. Yeah.
But then there's the silence when they say okay, and they walk away, and you're sitting there in silence, and you got nothing but the voices in your head. And one of them kind of says, maybe she's right, dude. Maybe she's right. And you start listening to the right voices, and the right things happen.
Yeah, man. So you didn't have to deal with substance abuse transitioning out, but you did have to deal with loss of identity and purpose. What did that look like for you? So
it didn't hit me until a little over a year after I got out. Mm-hmm. And looking back, I put things in order of how things happened. I was starting little business ventures on the side while I was in. I was listening to these podcasts. I was listening to Andy Frisella. I was listening to Ed Milet.
Ed Milet's great.
I love him. But they were talking about the losing identity and manufacturing your purpose. And it didn't sink in. It didn't sink in those words, manufacture your purpose. It didn't hit me. But it was kind of back there. When I was on terminal leave, I sat in my kitchen for 3 months, and I did nothing but apply for jobs. Towards the end of my career, I got into safety, and I fought it. I did not want safety. I knew it was a torpedo. It was going to kill my career. I was going to be done. But the more I was good at it, and that kind of put me on the path now. But I fought it for about a year and a half, and then finally the sergeant major was like, "You're fucking stuck there. You're not leaving." So that's when I started. Okay, well, maybe I can make a career out of this because I am getting like I was right at 20 years. I just re-enlisted to go to 2 more. I said, let's get serious about this and actually do it and set myself up to get a job when I got out. And that's what I started doing. I started working towards that. I liked the idea of having my own business, but I needed stability first. Like I needed a job. And every re-enlistment I've put in for jobs. I've done the civilian thing. I put in my re-enlistment and I'm applying for jobs at the same time. I knew it was going to come back approved, but I didn't want it to be denied and me sitting there like, what am I going to do now? Right. I always had jobs lined up in the civilian world, every single re-enlistment.
Plan B. Gotta.
Yeah, always. And I actually have my dream job handed to me at 8 years in. Like, here you go build your hazmat team in DC. Like, I applied as a technician. I'm like, I'm a trainer. And they're like, you could run the team, train your guys, pick your guys. And I was like,
okay.
I was 26 years old. I was living on base. I had a mountain of debt and a baby in diapers. I'm like, the thought of jumping out at that time, I knew once I started getting paid and got like a year from then, I knew I was going to be fine.
Right.
But the part where I was at in that year, not knowing where we're going to live, how we're going to eat, it scared the shit out of me. So I stayed in.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm sitting in my kitchen, and I think looking back, like my wife was getting frustrated with me because she was like, all you do is sit in the damn kitchen. But now she's like you sat in that kitchen applying for jobs. Like she understands it. At the time, she was a bit frustrated. I was frustrated too because I was throwing out applications and applications and applications. And you throw out 20 applications, you may get one back. Hey, let's do an interview. Yeah. And it took me a while. I got in with this group called Veterans Transition Services, or Veteran Transition Support, VTS. It's a nonprofit out of Oceanside or Vista, San Marcos area. And I learned more about transitioning. So I went there for an OSHA class, a free OSHA 10 class. And I learned more about transitioning out of the military than I did any OSHA shit because it was all run by veterans. Mm-hmm. I'm milking this thing for all I got. And again, every Saturday I'm down at this place doing classes, and the wife was like, why are you down here so much? I said, come with me. So I brought her with me to a training class, and halfway through the class, she grabs a sheet. She's like, you're coming back for this one and this one and this one and this one.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome.
She filled my schedule. But it was listening to guys like us that they would teach OSHA, they would teach the section, and then in the breaks, they would talk about their transition and what they did. So I kind of got guided out. So I'm sitting there for 3 months, launching. Finally, I get a hit. I get the job that I have now. And it's one of those things where I didn't want to take the job. Like looking at on paper, I was like, it's for a safety inspector. Like I've been a manager in the Marine Corps. Like I'm a gunny. Like I was like, that's like a low, but I remember what the transition guy says, take the low job, work up to the manager. Just get your foot in. So I was like, after the fourth time it popped up in my feed, like I dismissed it every single time I saw it. And I applied for it. And then as soon as I walked into this place, I was like, this is where I got to be. I mean, their logo is an eagle on the Liberty Bell with the American flag behind it. I'm like, I haven't talked to anybody yet. I was like, I saw the logo. I'm like, this
reminds you of the Eagle Globe and Anchor, right? Like it's way too close to. I mean, there's something there for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, this is where I got to be. And the interview went great. The guy called me up and said, hey, what you doing next Thursday? And I looked and I've got nothing but job interviews. I'm like, oh man, I'm kind of packed. He's like, well, I was like, wait a minute. I was like, what do you need? He's like, you want to start? I was like, oh yeah, we can start on Thursday. He goes, no, if you got stuff, I was like, they're job interviews. And it was like a job interview at Corporate Caterpillar, a safety guy for SeaWorld. They were pretty big positions. I was like, nah, I'll cancel them all. Let's go. And I've been there for a little over 4 years now. After that, we were renting a house, and we knew we needed a place because we were renting from a Navy guy who was in Italy. He was coming back in about a year, who needed to be back in his house. So we're like, we got a year to get ourselves into the position to buy a house. And that's what I focused on. So transitioning out, I focused on getting a job. And then it was, I had to get a house. I had a deadline. And we were renting a house, but we were paying more rent for that house than we are on the mortgage on our own house now. So that was like, we're going to buy our own house. So that became the focus. 3 weeks after we moved in, we bought the house, everything's complete. That's when it hit me. That's when I got hit with the depression, the loss of purpose,
It's that feeling like, what the fuck am I doing? That's punching you right in the gut, right? Like
yeah, and I couldn't. The more I thought about it, like I'm in this beautiful house we just bought. Like my life is good. I got a great job. The family's doing really good in school and moving up in their careers, and I'm like, why the fuck do I feel like shit? And I couldn't understand it. It took me a couple of weeks to. I'm glad it only took that long, but the purpose, it was gone.
Yeah. How did you end up finding your purpose again?
A voice hit me. It was the Ed Milet podcast, and I wasn't listening to it at the time, but it just started playing in my head, the manufacture your purpose. And that's when it started connecting the dots. When you're in the service, your purpose is manufactured. They give you the uniform, that's your identity. Be a good soldier, be a good Marine. Hey, work up to the next rank. Oh, you're an NCO now. Guess what? Your purpose is your troops. Mm-hmm. Look after them now. So your purpose is given to you every step of the way. No matter how high you get up, it's given to you. Once you get out, like, and being in the blue collar community for 4 years, like I see it on these guys' faces, like it goes beyond the uniform, but I think we get hit hard because you're wearing the uniform one day and the next day you're not, Yep. And I struggle. My kids have big events. They want me to wear my uniform too. And I'm like, that's not who I am anymore. I know I can do it. I can put it on, but I struggle with putting the uniform back on to go to I got a son in boot camp for the Army right now. He wants me to wear my uniform to graduation. And it's like, I want to do it, but putting the uniform back on, it's I don't know. I feel weird putting it back on. I know it's my right as a retiree. I can wear it wherever I want, but it just,
Yeah, it's almost like one of those things, like that's a chapter that I have closed. And if I put this back on, this is going to open up some things that we've shelved, that we've moved past, and we don't, I mean, I struggled with this, not in the sense of wearing a uniform, but, having an I Love Me wall with my fruit salad and the flag and some of the awards and stuff in my office. Right. And see, and I wrestled back and forth, and you can see it's behind me. It's blurry, but I finally succumbed. I was like, no, it's for me. I get to be proud of this. This is my way of closure on my career. And I think that I want to display this because I am proud of it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not for anybody else. It's not to show off. It's just for me to, as a reminder, you know what I mean? And when I got out, I got rid of literally everything. I kept one ACU uniform, which I don't even know why, because it's the worst uniform that the Army ever decided to issue. And then I kept my Class A's because, the balls were a lot of fun. Like, the balls are probably the most fun you'll ever have in the Army. And I'm sure the Marine Corps balls are even better, but, that's what the Class A uniform reminds me of, is those times, right? Like, and then obviously funerals and stuff like that I would have to go to throughout my career. But I get it, man. Putting that back on, first of all, I'm not cutting my hair and I'm not going to shave, and I'm not going to disrespect the uniform like that, because in my Army, and it's different now, they've got some different regulations on hair and facial hair, even, whatever. But in my Army, like, you don't put any piece of that uniform on without being in regulation. And I'm not willing to change that part of me now to experience the old me and putting that uniform on. You know what I mean? And I mean, that just is what it is. That's just my philosophy on it.
Yeah. I was thinking about it for the longest time, and I know it'd mean a lot to my son to wear it, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to wear my uniform. I'm going to shave the beard. I tried growing my hair out long, and I looked like fucking the caddy off of fucking the Happy Gilmore. I look like the caddy off of Happy Gilmore. My wife's like, you look homeless.
That's what I'm going for.
And I'm like, oh. And I was like, and as usual, the things that I fight my wife on the most, she's fucking right.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that because she's sitting right here. But I tried growing the hair out. I couldn't. And I was like, nah. I was like, I got to keep it short. So, but she hates the beard, but it'll go for the grad. And I kind of just like, dude, like, stop being scared. Just put the fucking uniform on. Like, I got to lose about 20 pounds between now and February to even look anywhere type of respectable in it. So I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna wear it for him. I think it'll at the end of the day, it's gonna be all right, and that's what he wants. My daughter-in-law graduated boot camp in the Army in May, and there was whisperings of, is dad gonna wear his uniform? But I wasn't really formally asked. I know, and I didn't wear it. And I saw guys there wearing it, and I'm like, But then I saw, like, the more I think about it, I'm like, bro, just fucking shave the beard.
Put it on. Yeah.
It'll grow. The beard will grow back whenever, it's just put it on. It's his day. I think if I put myself into my shoes when I graduated boot camp, if I had someone who was in the service come to my graduation, it would have been a really cool picture to stand next to a family member in uniform. Like, this, it's history. It's a family legacy.
And I'll tell you, man, it's really cool because I came home from Afghanistan. My sister was getting her commission from the University of Miami about 4 days after I got home. And we had been communicating back and forth via email while I was in Afghanistan. And I honestly didn't know if I was going to be home in time to go to it. And it's really funny. I'm kind of embarrassed by this, but I was an E6 at the time, but my dress uniform still had E5 stuff on. I didn't have time to get it changed, but we also I got with her husband and we surprised her. So at Miami, the ROTC candidates, they do their own commissioning ceremony. So they plan the whole thing. They write whatever speeches, who's going to pin you for all the introductions in the crowd. And it was so funny because they had to sneak me into the campus, into the event in my uniform without her seeing me, because my sister she's just a natural leader. She just wants her hands in all of that stuff. And she had been in charge of her own commissioning ceremony. And so the time comes and they're introducing who's here to pin her and sell her for a salute. And you can see her face change because they say my name. And she thinks that I'm not home yet. She doesn't know that I'm home from Afghanistan. And then you can see her face change again and start crying as I step on the stage to walk up to her and sell her her first salute. Dude, it's the coolest thing in the world, and you're not going to regret putting that uniform on, man. I promise you, because you're absolutely right. It definitely, not only for yourself, but for your son, it means a lot, man. I wish I would have had somebody, in a uniform at my basic training graduation. That would have been probably the only way it could have been better,
Yeah, it's funny. My wife was saying, you got to wear an Army Dad shirt to Fort Jackson to my daughter-in-law's graduation. I was like, no. So I went to the PX and MCRD here in San Diego, and I got a shirt that said better than you since 1775, and that was a shirt I wore to my daughter-in-law's graduation. So a bit of an asshole move, but a few people read it and they were like, "Fucking Marine." I said, "Yes, sir."
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So let's talk about you got that voice in your head. You were listening to Ed Milet podcasts and Manifest Your Own Purpose, and that ends up looking like you becoming an entrepreneur. You had started a couple of things before you got out. Where does the spark for entrepreneurship come from? Like for me, it's just very much I don't want to be told what to do, and I want to be in control of my own time. And it took me a long time to figure that out, and it was rough. But I'm so much happier going broke now, doing what I want when I want, controlling my own time, trying to build something that means something to me than I was fucking around with these guys who want to make me take PTO for a VA appointment that I have no control over when I can schedule, or threatening to be fired to go to, too many VA appointments. And I'm like, but I watched this other dude. He has a doctor's appointment every other day and he doesn't have to take PTO, and you're not threatening to fire him. That was really what it was for me. So how did you fall into it?
A few things. One, I don't want to work until I'm old. Like, I don't want to have a job, a 9 to 5 until, like, you see these Walmart greeters they're 85 years old working at Walmart because their retirement went to shit. Like, that's not what I want to be. So there's a bit of, I want to have enough money at some point to stop working and live the rest of my life. Another one was the time. Like, I love, I'm not going to say the company I'm with, but I love the company that I work for. 100%. Like, I've been offered to double my salary at other places, but the atmosphere here is just something. It reminds me of the service. I feel like I'm like, with my job and what I do, I'm a gunny, walk around making corrections. Put your fucking safety glasses on. Like, that's what I'm doing. So I love the job, but I don't love, like, right now I'm on the clock. I'm stealing time from the company to do this. Kind of dodging phone calls.
Well, I'm super grateful. So
I don't like that. Like, I don't like that feeling in me that I'm doing that, but I also don't like that I can't just do this podcast when I want. I still got to request permission. There's events that I couldn't go to this year because I don't have enough PTO built up, and my wife and I have things planned. Like, we're at the point now where our kids, like my youngest kid's 20 years old. So, and we're at a point in life where we're not going to have any more kids in the house. We've never been alone with kids. We've always, for the past 20 years, been up with kids, and now it's just us. Like, I want to grab my wife and say, let's go to Europe. Let's go to whatever. She's from Australia. Let's go to Australia. Like, let's do the things that we want. Let's live our lives. Yeah. And unfortunately, on a 9 to 5 paycheck, you're not going to do that. And you're not going to get the time to do that, because if you put in for PTO, it's only going to be max a week, and a week vacation is pretty good, but like, we're talking about going to Australia for 3 months in 2026. Like,
that's a lot better than a week.
Yeah, that's a lot better than a week. And I mean, and if that's a shitload of PTO that you're never going to get approved for, like, hey boss, right, I'll be gone for three months. See ya. Like, right. I want to own my time. I want to own my time. And I got into the business that I'm in. I got into it before I got out. I even started my own, like, making t-shirts and shit. And as soon as I made that into an LLC, business dried up. and it like I was making, as a hobby, I was making really good money in it. I was like, I can do this thing for real. And as soon as I went LLC, like all the customers just went away, and then I haven't done shit in that for 2 years. So I actually killed my LLC. But the other business that I'm in, I kind of took it for granted a little bit. That and getting out of the Marine Corps took all of my focus to find a new job, find a house. I had to move my family twice. Like it took all of my attention that the business I was in kind of fell to the side. But when I heard that you got to manufacture your own purpose, like that, it hit me. That's when it hit me. The uniform is gone. Like you were given all of that. That's something you did. It's not who you are. Use it to your advantage and move forward. And that's when I started getting into the business. And it's funny, I was all right. So I'm in this Facebook group, and I went to go leave because the chat was getting annoying. And when I went in to leave the group, I saw a veteran asking for help. He was asking for help without asking for help. He was explaining his situation, and he was asking for help. I was like, I got this guy. I hit him up. I said, look, this is what I do. I'm not saying it's going to work for you, but I can show you how to do it. And if you like it, you like it. You don't, you don't. We had several conversations on the VA and getting them out and who to go to for help and getting him set up. And he actually came in the business. I watched him get promoted, and it was probably the best feeling in the world seeing that guy move up and get promoted. Like,
yep.
With all the commissions, sales, everything, helping families, everything that I do, seeing him get promoted, I haven't felt like that in a long time. And it was, it was military. I worked on this guy, saw him get promoted, and it was probably the most rewarding feeling in the world. Like, and you can't put a dollar tag on that. You can't, it's just that solidified my purpose in helping these guys get out, helping veterans.
And I think I just had kind of an epiphany about this because I'm the same way. I generally, my philosophy is I'm here to just help you take the next step. Just have a small piece of moving you forward in wherever you're at in life fills my cup up. That gives me the purpose and that feeling that you're describing. And what I really think it is for both of us is we're just leaders and we get to lead again. And that's really what it is. If you look at it at its core and strip everything away from it, we actually get to be effective, genuine, authentic leaders, transformative leaders, not just, a leader, right? And I think that's what's giving us our purpose back. And hearing you say what I feel gave me kind of that notion just now. So that's awesome, man. And it's true, dude. Like when you help people achieve something that they didn't know they were capable of or that they were standing in their way about, and you see them climb and move forward, it's the most rewarding thing ever.
Yeah, I'll say like we throw a lot of cliches around, but one of the things that we say is if you're feeling useless, find a way to be useful. And that can be like a very daunting, like useful, like what is, and then you start thinking, well, am I not useful? So you start spiraling. But if you're feeling depressed, the best thing you can do is go find somebody to help.
Yep.
Just go find somebody to help. Go to 7-Eleven and pay for some dude's pizza or whatever drink they're buying. Find a homeless guy, give him some food. Like find somebody to help. Like
go to your city, stand on a corner with a sign that says free hugs and watch how much difference you make in people's lives. Yeah.
And that doesn't cost anything. Like just find somebody to help. And the feeling it's almost, I don't know, the feeling you get from helping someone, it feels better than being helped. Like you feel so good helping somebody that I can't place to work right now, but it almost feels wrong going out to help someone to make yourself feel better. But that's what we're here for. Live a life of service, and it'll be a fulfilling one for sure.
I love it, brother. Any advice you have for transitioning veterans just to make their journey through the transition easier?
Don't do it alone. Do not do it alone. I'm finding these veterans all over the place. I found a young guy a couple months ago who just got out with no VA rating, no VA appointments, no VA rating. I was like, what? How did you get out without any of this? And it was like, because you have to get everything signed off. And it's like, everything's a check in the box to make sure the Marine Corps said, we did what we supposed to do. I said, no. So I gave him, I was like, talk to this guy. I looked up where he lives. I found the DAV and the VFW close to his house. I was like, go to these places. Say, I need help with the VA rating. Like call these people. Now he's got a rating. Now he didn't have a job. He was worried about what he's going to do for work. Like he's got a job. He's got a rating. He's on track. And now he's on track to help somebody else. And that's what I tell him. Like, how can I pay you back? Like, you can't. Don't pay me back. Pay it forward. Find someone else to help. Like, Keep this thing going. Like, do not do it alone. I didn't do it alone. I didn't mean. I've always found myself at like the right place at the right time. I didn't mean to not do it alone. I was set up. I don't ask for help. I don't put myself out there. I need all this. No, now I do. But before, I put myself in a position to go to a free class.
Right.
And this guy's standing up in front of me, who was a civilian guy, but all of his OSHA teachers are veterans. And they would talk about what they did. This is what you need to take, write this phone number down, talk to this person. Like, we got step by step on how to transition out. And that's what helped me. That's what kept me from going, as Jay Glazer calls it, going into the gray. Like when that depression hit me after I bought this house, like it was a stomach punch. It rocked me. And the thing that rocked me the most is I couldn't figure out why I was feeling that way. And then it just, for a few weeks, it was hard. And then I just heard that, manufacture your purpose. And then everything fell in the line.
Yep.
And it was because I didn't do this stuff alone. I was around things that stuck up, even though I didn't remember it. Like, it took me a little bit. Don't do it alone. There are groups out there, the VFW, they exist to help you. So go knock on their door. The DAV, go knock on their door. Like, get help. Like, do not do anything alone. Even if it's a buddy. Hey, what do I do here? Hey, I heard this guy talk about this. Like, go over. Like, don't do anything alone.
I'm here. Reach out. I answer all my DMs myself. No VAs, no nothing. I do this all day, every day, trying to help dudes. I'm working with a guy right now who just wants to make professional mountain biking content and earn a living. And it's like, you can do that. You can absolutely do that. And I will help you do that. And I don't want anything from you. I just want to help you live a better life. And thank you for reaching out for help. You know what I mean? Like, because I did do it alone. I did it alone for really 8.5 years until Heroic Hearts sent me to Peru and to give me some perspective with ayahuasca that changed my whole life. And now I have no hesitation reaching for help. Like I actually just reached out to my network 2 nights ago to get help with some shit going on in my personal life, to make sense of some things, to talk to somebody who has answers that I'm not capable of coming up with right now. You know what I mean? And dude, if you're stuck in this mindset of, like Ben and I here, we were raised in a military where you don't ever ask for help, particularly the Marines and the Army infantry. It's weakness to ask for help. It's weakness to go, take care of injuries and physically and emotionally and mentally take care of yourself. And that's kind of the hardship that we have to work through no fault of our own. It's just how we were raised in the military. I'm here to tell you it's the strongest thing that you can do, and it's the highest form of self-love to ask for help. So just ask for fucking help. Stop doing it alone, because you're never going to climb out of that hole alone, period. End of story. And I mean, it's really that simple. Just ask for help. I promise you it's not as scary as you think that it is. It's not as scary as you feel. Most people are here to help you. Most people genuinely want to help you. At least that's my experience.
Yeah. And the more you do it, the more you reach out, and the more you ask for help, the more you find people that are doing things just to help with no cost. I know there's a lot of companies out there that charge for a higher VA rating, and they're pretty respectable. I found a guy yesterday, one of the guys I serve with, who does it for free.
Yep.
He will walk you through the whole process for free, like not like just to get you everything. And this guy, great dude. I just found out he's going to college on chapter 31. Like he's got everything going for him. Like, and all he wants to do is just help people. People.
Yeah,
I got way too many people in the grave from not asking for help and taking their own lives, that like you don't have to be the next one. And the more you try and do it on your own, the more you're going to just dig that hole deeper and deeper and deeper until you can't see the light. Like, and all it takes is just reaching out to somebody. Just reach out for help and you will get it tenfold.
Yeah, man. Ben, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for sharing your insights and your story. Whether you feel like it or not, this makes a difference. Each one of these episodes reaches somebody that needs to hear it. I'm convinced of that, particularly as the emails start rolling in, as people start finding the show. That being said, I turned 40 May 9th, 2025. Lofty goal. There's 19 million veterans in the United States. I would love to get 1 million downloads before I turn 40 on May 9th. We're running out of time. We got about 6 months left. So I do understand it's a lofty goal, but I do believe that this community is super powerful and we can get there. And I know the more people this show reaches, the more people that we as a collective group of veterans will be able to help each other. So I appreciate everybody for listening and tuning in. Ben, I especially appreciate you, and I'm super grateful for spending the time with me today and all the technical difficulties we've experienced, and just getting your story out there, man. I really love what you're doing, and I'm so glad you decided to come on. I really appreciate it, brother.
Hey, no, thanks for the invite. After listening to some of your shows, I'm like, what the hell do I have to offer? Like the latest one, I'm listening to that one for a second time. That was good. That was a really good episode.
Which one was it? I've got so many of these damn things out, man. The one I released last week.
It was with the guy you serve with.
Oh, Brandon McCrae. Yeah, and the third ID, the psychologist.
Yeah, from infantry to healing.
Yep. Oh, yeah. George Boyd. Yeah. So he was a subordinate of mine, and he was one of the early guys I reached out to do. There's been a couple of therapists I've had on that I've served with. So Dr. McCrae was one that I released a few weeks ago. George Boyd, amazing, man. And he enlightened me on some stuff like we had talked about earlier in this episode, some toxic leadership stuff that was going on. I had no idea that stuff was going on in his platoon, and I was like basically the cop mayor. I was the talking COIC. I had a finger on everything that was going on, and yeah, man, it's really cool to see all these guys doing some kind of work that fills their cup by helping others, and that's why I'm convinced. I didn't know. I still largely don't know what I'm doing with building this personal brand. I just had this idea for me that the path back to purpose is through entrepreneurship, or even intrapreneurship, climbing the corporate ladder as high as you can, but not falling into that trap of feeling like I got a family to take care of. I got to take the first job that comes my way because I've got to survive and now I'm going to be miserable. Like there's other ways to go about that. But I just felt like getting this in front of people and showing, those dark times, we all go through them in the transition, and you do make it out and you're not alone and you can have success on the other side. And I just generally believe through conversation, vulnerability, and authenticity, that's how we heal our community. So that's what it's about, man.
100%. And not to drag this out, but one thing I've noticed is that whatever veterans put 100% of their energy into, they become successful at. People talk about getting a purpose that's aligned with you. And if you do that, it'll be great, but you can manufacture a purpose. You see these veterans that get into the gangs, they get into the outlaw motorcycle gangs, they find a purpose in there. Even though it's negative and it's destructive, you're going to be successful at it. If you put 100% of your energy into destroying yourself, you're going to be successful at it. If you put 100% of your energy into building something, building a dream, helping someone, like whatever you pick as your purpose, you're going to be good at it. You might as well make it a positive one and get paid. There's a reason where the majority of the Fortune 500 company owners are veterans.
Yeah.
And it's like,
yep. No, man. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mr. Benjamin Parmley. Man, thank you so much for being here. Until next week, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you get immense value out of this. And I won't stop bringing you these as long as I draw breath. I have a lot of fun doing this. It's cathartic for me, and I think it's ultra valuable for our community. So take care, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Thanks again, Ben.
Hey, no problem.